Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nick Hall.
Thank you. I know it's been a long day, so I need to make absolutely certain that you're going to be ready for the information I'm going to be conveying to you during this last hour. I need to give you a very short test. Only one question, and all you have to do is answer loudly and in unison in response to this question. Does everyone understand? Yes. All right. What color is my shirt? White. What color is freshly fallen snow? White. What color is cotton? White. What do cows drink? No. Cows drink water. They give milk. And I have now answered for you the question. Through this demonstration, I have now answered the question. I know what to do, so why don't I do it? The primary reason is the same reason why you answered incorrectly, even though you knew better, because I set you up, just as you set yourselves up with your beliefs and your thoughts. The brain craves the familiar. We like to stay on familiar ground. When we risk change, we also risk failure. And once the brain determines what the familiar pattern is going to be, which in this case was the paradigm of white, then all of your other answers are going to be consistent with that. What if instead of the concept of white, the image that I had implanted in your mind was that of failure, or something that was likely to instill a negative emotion? And there is no question about it, but what holds us back, what prevents us from achieving our dreams, from realizing our successes, is nothing more than the emotion of fear. Specifically, it is fear of failure. You can do anything you want. If you want it bad enough, if it's a worthwhile objective, if you are willing to expend the time and effort to achieve it, you can have anything that you want. Whether it is a larger retirement account or more time with your family, whether it's a larger number of clients, an increase in your sales quota, or better health, if you are willing to devote the necessary time and effort, and if you want it badly enough, you can get it. But the reason why so many people do not realize their dreams is simply because they don't believe they can, and they fear the failure which could very well happen when they institute any sort of change in their life. Fear is an emotion that is often categorized as being negative, along with anger, along with disgust. And like all of the negative emotions, what it will do is prompt you to go into withdrawal, to hold back. That is how the brain is programmed. After all, if something is giving rise to a negative emotion, you want to take steps to avoid going to that same place again. Whereas the positive emotions are going to prompt you to advance, to move forward, so that you can realize that same emotion again in the future. And not only does the emotion of fear prompt us to go into a state of withdrawal, it also serves to cancel out the effects that the desire for riches and positive emotions might be able to exert. Remember the childhood game rock, paper, scissors? Well, fear is the paper equivalent to rock. It will cover opportunity. It will prevent you from seeing the things that you can and ought to be doing to achieve your objective. But at the same time, fear is the rock to scissors. It will break your dreams, it will break your motivation, it will prevent you from having the will to move forward. And that is why it is so critically important that you do something about it. And that's the good news. There is a way that not only can you harness that fear of failure, so that you neutralize its impact upon your ability to achieve success, but there is also a technique I'm going to tell you about that will enable you to convert that fear, one of the most powerful emotions that exists in the body, into a force that will catapult you to your success. But first, I need to explain a few things about the emotion of fear. Unlike all of the others, fear is the emotion of the future. You can only be afraid of things that have not happened. If it's already happened, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can be disgusted, but you cannot be afraid. Let's, for a moment, suppose that I have a fear of heights. I don't, but let's pretend I do. My family has enticed me to vacation with them in the Grand Canyon. And there is no way that I'm going to get close to the edge. I'm scared to death of getting close to the edge of the Grand Canyon. So I encourage them to go off, get photographs. I'm going to follow this little nature trail. And I'll meet them later on back at the car. So off I go. I'm matching up the pictures in the book with the foliage which is scattered about. I'm preoccupied with what I'm doing. And I realize that I have taken the wrong turn. And suddenly I find myself on the edge of the Grand Canyon. I'm not afraid of getting to the edge anymore. I'm already there. Now I'm afraid of falling. And just at that moment, my daughter comes around the corner. Hey, Dad, there you are. We haven't seen you in a while. It startles me, and now I begin to fall. I'm not afraid of falling anymore. Now I'm afraid of landing. While this is a very trivial example, nonetheless, it basically is a statement as to what the emotion of fear is all about. And the reason it is associated with the future is because the essence of fear is the inability to predict what is going to happen next. It is that inability to predict, to look into the future, that grips us with fear. So the first approach you can use in order to overcome that fear which is holding you back, keeping you from making those new contacts, keeping you from following up with other prospective clients, the first thing that you need to do is be able to predict into the future. Obviously, the best way to do that would be to seek out a crystal ball. Unfortunately, such things exist only in the minds of fiction writers. The next best thing is to acquire knowledge. Know more, and you will fear less. That's how I made it through the Ultimate Florida Challenge. I read the release form, and before signing it, pondered, did I really want to do this? It was several pages listing all of the ways that contestants could die during this event. Everything from encounters with alligators, sharks, to lightning strikes, being run over by powerboats, swamped by waves, and drowning. And that was just the beginning. And had I focused only on those obstacles, I doubt seriously that I would have signed up for that event. But I was able to lessen my fear by basically following the advice of Lord Baden-Powell, what has become the Boy Scout motto, which is, be prepared. And by memorizing charts, by learning to operate safety equipment, EPIRBs, GPS, such things as that, and by training and experiencing what future potential situations could be like, I was able to lessen my fear. And this is what I recommend that you do in whatever context you need to lessen that fear. I do these races every year. The short ones are 300 miles, the Everglades Challenge. Every other year, we do the 1,200-mile race, which goes around Florida. And whenever I begin training, I spend a week in December on the Atlantic coast, because during the month of December on the Atlantic, I know it's going to be cold. I know the waves are going to be crashing in. I'm going to experience the worst conditions I possibly will encounter any time during the week-long or month-long race. And what it enables me to do is experience capsizes under my terms. It enables me to break equipment that normally I wouldn't break and then learn how to fix it under duress while in the water. And as a result now of that experience, as a result of having that knowledge, my fear when I leave on March 4th and set out on that race is considerably reduced. The more you know, the more you learn about the product, the less fearful you will be in encountering a prospect and worried that you may not know the answer. The more you understand about what it is you are doing, the less fear you will have. But sometimes fear overcomes us. Sometimes we find our heart rate soaring into the tachycardia range. Sometimes we find perspiration dripping out of our palms. We are almost at the point of being overcome with an emotion, such as fear. So what is something that you can do to now put the brakes on? You've had a setback. You've worked your heart out to sign that contract, to sign on that new client. And now what do you do when everything appears to be going down the tubes? One of the most effective strategies that I discovered over 20 years ago is acting. Act the way you want to be. Use that as a technique to reverse the negative impact that the fear you are experiencing is likely to have. Now, when I use the word acting, I'm not talking about faking it. Fake it till you make it is the term you hear athletes use a lot. No, I'm talking about using the Stanislavski, the method acting skills that professional actors use to induce a real emotion. And what you are going to do is create a condition of emotional interference. You are now going to create a different emotion which is now going to neutralize the fear which is holding you back. It works. If any of you saw the Bill Moyers program, Healing in the Mind, the Emmy Award-winning show on PBS, you saw the study I'm speaking about. It was a study that I did with professional actors where I had them act different roles to see if it could change their immune systems. I had them act out very negative, depressed roles, the type of personality that you would associate with increased susceptibility to illness. I made them act as though they were stressed out and depressed. And lo and behold, their immune systems went south. And then the same actors acted a short piece which was euphoric, uplifting, joyful. And that down-regulation of the immune system totally disappeared. If you can change the immune system, if you can change the biological activity of the cells that comprise that God-given healing system that we all have, the T cells, B cells, natural killer cells, macrophages, you name it, if you can change the behavior of these cells and their ability to fight disease, can you imagine how you could use this same skill to overcome obstacles in your own life, to achieve your successes? And you can do it. You've had an opportunity to view the successes of many whose successes you would like to emulate. Or perhaps you have had successes in other dimensions of your life. What I want you to do is write a script. Prepare a script of the way that you want to be. Draw upon a past success that you had, or base it upon the way that you see those before you that you would like to be acting, and write down everything in your script, the way they walk, the way they carry themselves, the expression on their faces. And that is what you are going to practice doing. Because what's going to happen is you are basically going to put yourself back in space and time to a moment of success. You are going to try and trigger the subconscious mind and activate all of those circuits that were in place when you achieved that success, but now you're going to do it on your terms by recreating that behavior. It works. And now I would like to do a demonstration to show you exactly how it works. I need a volunteer. Actually, we can have more than one volunteer. Stay where you are, don't go anywhere yet. First of all, stay where you are, because you may not want to volunteer after I tell you what this is that you're volunteering for. I want you to induce the emotion of sadness. I want you to make yourself cry. And these have to be real tears of sadness. You can't pull out a nose hair or pinch yourself. If you are successful in doing this, I have been authorized to offer you $10,000. Cash. Stay where you are. Few more contingencies. First of all, you cannot do this in the privacy of your chair. You have to come up here, but not yet, onto the stage, and do it in front of everybody. Not only that, but you have 30 seconds from the time you get up here to pull that off. And while you are evoking an image in your mind that is likely to induce tears of sadness, I want you to arrange the muscles in your face so that you are smiling at the same time. And if you are not successful in doing that in 30 seconds from the time you leave your chair, you have to give me $10,000. Any takers? I would suspect that many of you could actually do this if there were no pressure. If I hadn't added those contingencies, if you were able to relax quietly somewhere, you could do it. But when I began to add the same contingencies that exist in each of our lives, there are time constraints. You have to accomplish the goal within a deadline. There are financial losses if you are not successful. Now it becomes exceedingly difficult. An Academy Award-winning actor wouldn't be able to pull that off. They would have to spend hours just getting themselves into the mood, creating the right type of image that is going to enable them to do that on the spot. And when you put that smile on your face, that's the coup de grace. Ever since you were born, ever since you smiled back at your parents, your mind, your body has associated the feedback signals going from those muscles back into your brain with warmth, security, and happiness. The opposite emotions of fear, of sadness. In physics, we call it destructive interference. If you take two sound waves and superimpose them so the peak of one corresponds to the trough of the other, they will cancel each other out. That is exactly how the muffler in that car works. I call it emotional interference. And now, through acting, what you are doing is inducing an emotion that is opposite to the emotion that you want to experience. What happens so often is the opposite of the scenario that I have just described to you. It is not a smile, it is not happiness that cancels out sadness. Instead, it is a negative emotion such as fear, which cancels out the positive emotion that is motivating you to move forward. But wouldn't it be wonderful if you could somehow harness the energy of the most powerful emotion that we have in our body, the emotion of fear, the emotion that always wins? It has to. You can't make a mistake. You can't ignore a potential threat. your brain is going to make sure that you are far more likely to respond to something that you think is fearful, even though it isn't, in order to protect you. But what if you could somehow harness the energy of the emotion of fear and turn it into a force that you could actually use to achieve your success? Well, you can do it. You rarely regret what you do. You regret the things you do not do. And what I'm going to suggest you do is, as you are contemplating the things you ought to be doing, you're not sure if you should or not, it's a bit of a gamble, you're likely to spend a lot of money, a lot of resources in trying to land that contract, to get that person to sign on. What I want you to do instead is think of what you will regret if you do not follow that course. It's what I did. When I had finished my graduate training, I had a PhD in neuroendocrinology, 2 years of postdoctoral training in tumor immunology, and I'd been offered a very good job at the University of Texas, the branch in Galveston, working with one of the top immunologists in the country, Alan Goldstein, who had recently discovered the thymosin peptides. He wanted me to join his research team so that we could start doing research to find out how it impacted the brain, how it could impact emotions and performance. It was an incredible job, an incredible opportunity that would launch my career. But at the same time, I was offered an opportunity by National Geographic to lead an expedition to the West Indies, sail around the islands to find out why whales swim up onto beaches and commit mass suicide. It wasn't a permanent position, very short term, only a couple of years. Well, I did what everybody does, consulted with advisors, my graduate advisor, my department chairman, asked them what I ought to do. And they told me I was insane for even considering it. You'll toss away all that education. There are no libraries down there in the West Indies, in Grenada. There's no way you'll be able to keep up. You'll forget everything you learnt, and you'll probably rot your brain out with a bottle of rum under a palm tree somewhere. And so I made up a list of all the reasons I should go to Galveston. I made up another list of all the reasons why I should go to Grenada. The list of reasons why I should go to Texas I could fit onto a legal pad. The reasons for going to the West Indies I could fit onto a postage stamp. But I really wanted to go. I really wanted to take that risk, but when I posed the question, what should I do, clearly taking the road that was against the wishes of my heart, my intuition, won out. So I reframed the question. And instead of asking myself, what should I do? I asked myself the question, what will I regret not having done at some future date? And within a matter of days, my wife Hazel and I were packing up our then 6-month-old daughter, and we literally sailed off into the sunset, and I've never looked back since. I've never had a real job since, I might add, but I could care less. Because the experiences, the opportunities that arose were far, far greater than any that would have arisen had I taken that first position. And eventually I did get a job in academia. It didn't last very long. I've never had a job more than 8 years. That says something about me. And that is what I recommend you do. If you are ever faced with a critical choice, a critical decision, yes, consider all the reasons why you should make a certain choice. But make sure that you also include the question, what will I regret not having done at some future date? If you don't take these types of steps to get rid of that fear, to neutralize its impact, you will not see the events that unfold before you that could very well be golden opportunities that will take you to the next level. Instead, you are likely to view those same events as being merely obstacles. Now let's consider the nature of these events. Is there a way that you can more clearly see an opportunity as such and not miss something by incorrectly perceiving it as an obstacle? Realize that everything you respond to, every person you listen to, everything that happens to you is not happening in reality. What you are responding to is an image of that person, an image of those words, an image of what is transpiring before you in your mind. You are not responding to my words right now, nor are you responding to the pattern in this tie or any of these surroundings. What you are responding to is the translation of visual information, auditory information, somatosensory information, the sense of touch, into an image in your mind. It is the image in your mind that is going to determine whether you move forward or whether you stay back. It is the image in your mind that is going to give rise to an emotion. It is the image in your mind that's going to activate all of your biochemistry that will enable you to have a fuel to propel yourself to reach your objective. It is the image. You have no control over another person's behavior. Anyone with teenagers knows that. Nor do you have much control over outside economic trends, but you have 100% control over the events that you choose to focus your attention upon, and you have 100% control over the beliefs that you filter that information through as you now create the image. You are in control. However, the reason why some people achieve success and the others don't, why some people will see an opportunity and seize it, while others will walk past it and never notice, is not because there was something different about the event, but rather there was a difference in the way they perceived it. No two people have the same life experiences. No two people have embraced the same beliefs. So it is highly unlikely that any two people will create the same image in response to the exact same circumstances. It's rather like an artist who sets about to paint a beautiful panoramic vista. While setting up her easel, trying to decide which brushes, which paints to employ, realizes there must be an airport nearby, for periodically planes are flying across the horizon. But that is not part of what she considers to be the natural scene. And so even though the airplanes are a part of the reality, she makes the conscious decision to leave them out of the image she is about to capture on canvas. And over here behind her is a beautiful weathered cedar tree. How beautiful it would look if it were only in the foreground. It's not. It's off to the side. It's behind her. But that doesn't stop her from employing artistic license and now making it a part of her image. And that is what we do all the time. We add things to our image that never happened. We leave things out of our image that we don't want to see. Why? Because it's inconsistent with our belief system. I experienced this in a very personal way when I was a professor at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I embarked on a series of studies to determine whether or not a person could actually create an image in their mind of their immune cells moving towards a cancer. After all, if an image is guiding the body, then why not? Why not create an image which is going to enable your natural killer cells, your cytotoxic T cells, to snuggle up to the tumor, inject lethal chemicals into it, and destroy it? That was the premise. That was the hypothesis. And it received a huge amount of attention. It was considered one of the first studies ever done that attempted to look at microscopic changes in the immune system in the context of a deadly disease in response to a behavioral intervention. And as a result, it got a lot of media attention, including an interview with Diane Sawyer on 60 Minutes. And whenever I give and that opened up the floodgates. The exposure that the study and I received as a result of that resulted in invitations to speak around the country, actually around the world, on the subject of imagery and healing. And whenever I present any type of lecture, doesn't matter what the topic, I always try to present a balanced viewpoint. I present the pros and the cons, and these seminars were no exception. I spoke about those people in our study whose lives appeared to be transformed as a result of the imagery, those people who are probably going to live longer as a result of doing this. But I also spoke about those people we had to take out of the study, because there was every reason to believe that if they continued, they probably weren't going to do as well. They were preoccupied with the imagery. They felt guilty that maybe they were doing things wrong, or what did they do to get the cancer in the first place, that sort of thing. I remember after presenting this balanced viewpoint to an audience, a lady coming up to me at the end of the seminar and saying, "Dr. Hall, I had breast cancer diagnosed, and because of its advanced stage, the doctors gave up on me. They said there's nothing left in our arsenal of treatments that could possibly help you." And she went on to explain that they gave her no more than 18 months to live. She told me that she read about the research in guided imagery. It made sense to her. She'd read a book on the subject. She started doing it. And she said, "Do you know that that prognosis was made 6 years ago? My cancer has been in remission ever since. And I want to thank you for saying all the wonderful things that you have just said to validate that I did the right thing." A few moments later, a man came up, introduced himself as a psychologist from Chevy Chase. He said, "Dr. Hall, I've always known that guided imagery is a lot of rubbish, a waste of people's time. And I want to tell you how refreshing it was to hear a scientist who's done research in the field to have the courage to stand up and publicly state it's all a waste of time. Thank you very much." And that is when I realized the wisdom of the old Chinese proverb. What the eye sees, what the ear hears, is what is already in your mind. Seeing is not believing, believing is seeing. You have control. You control the beliefs that you are filtering the information through. You may not have control over the specific event that is inducing the sensory information that is creating that image, but you have control over the most important part of all, and that's the ultimate image that is going to drive your healing system, your motivation, the things that you need to have in place in your body to either move forward and take advantage of opportunities, or whether you elect to allow it to hold you back. I'm going to do a brief demonstration and show you exactly what I'm speaking about. I want you to just listen briefly to this list of words and just quietly sit there and reflect upon the image in your mind, the image that comes to mind as you hear these words. Bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wake, night, eat, comfort, sound, slumber, snore. And now I want you to take a scrap of paper and write down as many of those words as you can recall. This is not a test. If you want to confer with a person next to you, make it a group effort. That's okay. Just recall as many of those words as you can recall. How many of you have at least 3 words on your list so far? How many of you have included the word bed, snore, sleep, Just out of curiosity, how many of you have a word sleep at the top of your list? Very interesting, because the word sleep was not one of the 12 words I just read to you. The words I read were bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wake, night, eat, comfort, sound, slumber, snore. Every one of those words evokes an image in your mind of sleep. You could have passed a polygraph test. There was no deception involved in your part. There was no reward for getting it right. There was no punishment if you got it wrong. You honestly heard in your mind my saying the word sleep. And it illustrates exactly what I had been saying. You don't respond to reality. What you are responding to is the image that is created in your mind. Remember that. That is the part you control, and that is the part that, if you control it right, will lead you to the successes that you deserve. The goal that you choose for yourself is absolutely critical. And whether or not you achieve that goal is going to be based upon the way you perceive it. And what is going to really shape your perception of the event is going to be your beliefs. As I said before, no two people embrace the same beliefs. Therefore, it is quite likely, as in the illustration I gave you of the people at the seminar, that people will sometimes hear completely opposite things as a result of the same experience. If you are creating images, if you are doing things, or rather if you are not doing things that you ought to be doing, you know how to do it, then what you need to do is change your image, and the way to change it is to begin by examining your beliefs. First of all, ask yourself this question: what do I believe? There's another program I teach. It's called Change Your Beliefs, Change Your Life. Some of you may have seen it. It's published by Nightingale Conant. And when I teach the program to live audiences, I always begin by asking people, what do you believe? What do you believe is important about balancing work and family? What do you believe is the definition of success? I've stopped doing it. It wastes too much time because people don't know how to answer. They'll nudge each other and say, look, tell me what you think, and I'll give him that answer. Or, hey, Doc, can I sleep on it? I know I can think of something. I'll tell you tomorrow morning at breakfast. How sad it is that many people are coursing through their entire lives responding to images shaped by their beliefs, but they don't have a clue what that belief is. And after you have established what that belief is, now ask yourself these three questions. Is this belief justified? Have things really happened during the course of my life to warrant my clinging to this belief? Number two, is this belief serving a useful purpose? Is it helping me to achieve my personal objectives? Is it helping me to enrich my family and my relationships? Is it helping me to achieve the goals that I have set for myself in my business? And number three, does it make me feel good? Those three questions. Is it justified? Is it serving a useful purpose? Does it make me feel good? And subject your beliefs to those questions multiple times, because circumstances change, and a belief that might have been warranted earlier on in another occupation may no longer be justified. My entire life has been changed as a result of someone else's erroneous belief. I was 7 years old, had arrived home from school, absolutely devastated. I had failed an arithmetic test. And I really thought that it was the end of the world. My mother, a wonderful lady, I love her dearly, tried to console me. She said, "Don't worry about it. No one in our family has ever done well in math." And I thought to myself, yes, I'm not the one who's stupid. I simply chose the wrong parents. It was that darned ancestor, the one who passed on a faulty genetic blueprint, one which didn't have any numbers in it. And so from that point on, I did not apply myself in math. Why bother? Why waste time doing something that I wasn't going to succeed at anyway? And if I got a barely passing grade and moved on to the next form, I was happy as a clam. It wasn't until I got into graduate school. And don't ask me how I got into graduate school with my grades in math. That still bewilders me. And I had to take statistics, followed by advanced statistics. When I came to realize, with the help of a very good professor, that not only is math not difficult, it's a lot of fun. Especially when you can see the application, which in my case was having it as a tool to interpret the data I would be collecting in my chosen profession as a scientist. But how I have wondered how very different my life might have been had it not been for that one consoling statement. I might have become an accountant, a CPA. I might be working for the IRS, auditing your tax returns right now, getting ready to cause you a great deal of duress rather than talking to you about how to reverse your fears. And I wonder, when I look out at an audience like this, when I walk through airports, how many brilliant artists, how many accomplished musicians, how many scientists, entrepreneurs are out there, but they never even tried, they never pursued their dream because someone said, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't make a living doing that. You're too tall, you're too short, you're not big enough." And that is why it is so important to ask yourself, what is my belief? What is my belief? Make sure it is not the belief of someone else. Make sure that they are not living vicariously their dreams through you by influencing the choices that you make, because that often happens. Make sure it is your belief, make sure it is justified, make sure it is serving a useful purpose, and make sure that it makes you feel good. And now I want you to take those beliefs and, using these criteria, shape the goal that you want to achieve. It's got to be a goal that is near and dear to you. It's got to be something personal, not someone else's objective, not someone else's goal. I have lost track of a number of times I have taught medical students, and invariably, when they have trouble with their grades, they will come to me and ask for extra time, office hours, tutorials, that sort of thing. I'll do my homework, and I'll discover that they are failing biochemistry, they're failing physiology, not just my course, neuroscience. And I'll say, "Why are you doing this? Why are you subjecting yourself to all of this duress? You obviously are not cut out to be a doctor." And they would eventually admit it. "Yes, you're right. I really wanted to be a car mechanic. I love tinkering with old cars. Wanted to be a musician. I love playing jazz piano. But my father was a doctor. So was my mother. My grandfather was a doctor. In fact, we can trace our medical lineage all the way back to the Stone Age. And when I was a little boy, I used to play doctor with the little girl next door, and everyone said I would make a marvelous doctor. So I have to become a doctor, otherwise I'll be letting everybody down." So always ask, what is my belief? What is my goal? What is it that I want to achieve? And make sure it's consistent with your beliefs. And make sure you focus on the right part of the goal. Realize that goals are very complex. How many of you have set as a goal having a waterfront mansion, or a beautiful yacht, or a luxury car. If those are your goals, you are very likely to fail to achieve it. And the reason is that is not the goal, that is the reward you will receive once you have achieved the real goal, and the real goal has to be providing a service that other people need with more value than your competitor is able to offer. Unfortunately, that is not something you can paste on your refrigerator. You can't put it over your bedstand and have an instant image in your mind of what it is that you want to achieve. Keep those things up there. Those are noble objectives. But realize that your focus has to be on the goal, the real goal, which is providing a service that other people need with greater value than they have, that the competition can provide to them. And now you will see the opportunity to achieve that particular goal. You need to be mindful of the process. When I set out from Fort DeSoto Beach in that little boat, knowing that the finish was 1,200 miles away, and that around the midway point I was going to have to carry that boat along with about 160 pounds of gear 40 miles from the St. Mary's River over to the Swanee River. We all had to do that. It was part of a race as we got around the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia. There was no way that I could even contemplate getting to the finish. That was not my goal. My goal was not to get to the finish. That was too far away. That was nearly a month away. I need something that was more current. And even more importantly, I needed to have a goal that I had 100% control over. There were 10 of us who set out from that beach. And indeed, the organizer was quoted in the Times of London as saying he didn't know if anybody could even complete it. He did not know if it was even physically possible to circumnavigate Florida in a little boat like that. So we weren't sure if it could even be done. Now, some of the contestants set as an objective covering between 50 and 60 miles a day, about the distance we would need to cover in order to get there at a respectable time. Other contestants set as a goal to make it to a particular checkpoint by a certain date. Those were not my objectives because I had no control over them. I could not control when I would arrive at an inlet and whether the force of a tide would slow me down, maybe even prevent me from making forward progress. I had no way of knowing when a front would come in, perhaps with 30-mile-an-hour headwinds, slowing my pace down to possibly less than 1 mile an hour, and that happened. And so if my goal had been to cover 50 miles, 60 miles in a day, and I only covered about 15 or 18, then obviously I failed. And what's that going to do to my morale? So my goal every single day was to make forward progress to my goal, to my objective, for 18 hours every single day. That was my objective. I had 100% control over it. It didn't matter how fast I was moving. As long as I was making forward progress towards my destination, I was succeeding. And no matter how far I had gone, halfway through the day, I had racked up maybe 9 hours already. I'm well on my way. I'm going to achieve my goal today. And you know what? It didn't matter if my rudder broke and I had to go in and make repairs to a marina, and if I was going to have to go out of my way to get to a marina that had the parts I would need to build a new one. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that I might spend 2 or 3 hours sitting there in a machine shop making the necessary repair, because that was making forward progress towards my goal. Your goal should not be to recruit X number of new clients. Your goal should not be to sign on a certain number of individuals to go into your business, because you have no control over the choices they will make. There are too many variables that you can't control. What your objective should be is to make 5 new contacts every single day. pick up that telephone, write a note, and perhaps to do a certain number of follow-up contacts. It makes no difference whether the person slams the phone down or refuses to talk to you. You have made the attempt to make a new contact. And you know what? If you make 5 contacts every day, 5 days a week, that's 25 a week, that's 100 a month. You do the math, and chances are a certain number of those are going to materialize into new customers. So your goal should always be something that you have control over in order to prevent you from becoming demoralized, to make sure that you are able to maintain your level of motivation to propel you forward. But there's one more thing that I would like to address. I've been speaking about a lot of tangible things. I've been talking about the riches that one might enjoy when you are successful. I've been speaking about the process that you might engage in, the things you control, the beliefs, the images, and so forth. But sometimes there are things that we cannot define that influence what happens to us and those around us. I would like to tell you the story of a little girl who lives in the Tampa Bay area. Her name is Jennifer. Wonderful little girl, bright, intelligent, loved her family, especially her father. A hard-working man, but no matter how tired he was at the end of the day, he always found time to play with his daughter, and their daily, nightly ritual was his reading a bedtime story to her. Her favorite story, the one she insisted on hearing every single night, was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. She loved that story. She never got tired of hearing it. He got sick and tired of reading it to her, but he never let on. One night, as she drifted off to sleep, she was unawares that after he had gone downstairs, her father had suffered a massive heart attack. The next morning, when she went down to the kitchen, a neighbor was babysitting her. And later on that morning, her mother came home. She set aside her own emotional needs as she sadly explained to Jennifer that she would never see her daddy again. He loved her very much, but unexpectedly, he had to go to heaven. Well, Jenny was absolutely distressed, as you would expect. She was sad, but she was also angry. Why would my dad leave without even saying goodbye? Why would he go to heaven now? My birthday's coming up. Couldn't he have waited till after it was over? She stopped paying attention in school. She lost interest in playing with her friends. And this otherwise very bright, outgoing little girl became reclusive. Her mother was now beside herself. Not only was she dealing with the tragedy of losing her husband, but now she was dealing with this setback with her daughter. She consulted with a friend, a social worker, who suggested that on the weekend of her birthday, she take her to Clearwater Beach, check into a hotel, get her away from the environment she had been in where this tragedy had occurred, and make it a fun-filled weekend, buy some postcards, encourage her to write to her friends, to open up those outlets again. And she did that. And the little girl did write some postcards to her friends, but Jennifer also wrote one to her dad. She reminded him that her birthday was coming up. She even included the date, that it was that weekend. And because he had no way of knowing that she was staying there at the beach hotel, she made a notation of where she was and then pleaded with her that if he could possibly find a way, how much she would love it if she could just simply see him on her birthday. She addressed it to him in heaven. That was the postcard she accidentally dropped in the sand. It was found later on that evening by a retired couple out for their evening stroll. They picked it up, they read it, and they were touched by what they read. They had a granddaughter about her age, and they wanted to do something special. They had the address, they knew where she was staying. They went to a store to buy her a gift, something that they hoped would cheer her up. And when they went to the lobby, they gave the name. The front desk called the mother. They explained to the mother what they wanted to do. She brought Jennifer down, and they told her that your daddy is in heaven. He loves you very much. He misses you too, but he simply couldn't leave to be here for your birthday. But please accept this gift. She opened it up. Inside was a video of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That act of kindness, that single act of altruism, did more than any medicine, than any form of counseling, even time, could ever have done to initiate the healing process. And now, as a result of her healing getting underway, the mother was able to devote her emotional resources to dealing with her own recovery. Was it divine intervention? Was it coincidence? There's no way of knowing, but who cares? We have to recognize that there are forces out there. There's more to achieving success than simply focusing specifically on goals. We sometimes have to not only do what's in the blueprint, but we have to follow our heart. We have to do what we know is intuitively right. And if you do that, you will indeed achieve the successes that you so richly deserve. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm Nick Hall, one of the authors here at Nightingale Conant, and wanted to give you a brief overview of the Change Your Beliefs, Change Your Life program. I believe it's very important that we identify the beliefs that shape the images that we create in our minds. A lot of people think that when they respond to things, it's the outside world. It's that altercation in the workplace. It's the relationship. It really isn't. It's the image that you create in your mind that is created by those events. And while you may not be able to control the events that are causing turmoil in your life, you have 100% control over what you focus upon and the way your beliefs shape that image. I encourage people to always ask themselves, what is it that I believe? A lot of people don't know. Or if they do know, chances are it's not their belief. It might be a hand-me-down belief, something they heard from a parent or a friend. Or it might be an advertised belief, something they heard in a commercial or that they have been told about. It might be a cultural belief, something that is part of the Constitution, a religious document. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking your beliefs from any of these sources, but it is important to make sure that it's consistent with your value system. And that's why I ask people to always take what I call the belief challenge test. There are 7 steps in this process. The 3 most important ones, I believe, though, are to ask yourself, first of all, is this belief justified? In other words, have things actually happened in my life that would justify my clinging to this belief? Number 2, is this belief serving a useful purpose? Is it helping to enrich my personal life? Is it helping me to progress in my professional endeavors? And number 3, which I happen to think is one of the most important, does it make me feel good? Now, while the answers to these questions, as well as the other 4, are very important, what's more important is that you engage in the process of examining your beliefs. The images that we create in our minds in response to the beliefs that we filter the information through impact virtually every aspect of our lives. And by examining your beliefs, you'll find that it can have a positive impact on your immune system, your ability to fight infection. It can impact profoundly your performance, your productivity. It can even improve your relationships. And the reason is because if there is a mismatch between the image you create in your mind and what is really happening, your response to the circumstances cannot be the right one. It will be an unhealthy response. And so by examining your beliefs, you can always increase the likelihood that what you are responding to in the world is truly a reflection of reality and what is really happening. I direct the Wellness Center at Saddlebrook Resort near Tampa, Florida, where I focus primarily on working with corporate clients as well as elite athletes. And I teach a live version of what is presented in the Nightingale Conant program, Change Your Beliefs, Change Your Life. And I've had a number of people come to me afterwards and tell me how it's transformed their lives for the better. If you contact Nightingale Conant and order my program, Change Your Beliefs, Change Your Life, I know that you will find what countless others have, and that is it's going to be a very important, significant first step in making the changes that you probably need to be making.